when we got into the park, we realized that this hike we were going to do was probably going to take us like 3 or 4 hours, and we'd only put 2 hours on the parking meter. So factor this into your time if you're doing parking meters and going on a hike. This is a lesson we learned because you get about half a mile into Acadia and there's no cell coverage for Ken or I on our cell phones. We have 2 different carriers on purpose because we want to make sure we always have good reception. If one carrier is not working, oftentimes the other one is. But in this case, neither carrier was working. Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance-based private therapy practice and a multi-six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance-based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. So today is my monthly update. I just want to fill you guys in on where I've been, lessons I've learned, things we've done along the way. So I think my last update, I was in Niagara Falls. We had just gotten there. We had a blast in Niagara Falls. We spent 1 week there and we got to do quite a bit in that short time that we were there. Ken's mother came in and stayed with us for the week, so that was fun to have family come in and hang out. She's always a blast. I have a lot of fun with her. It's kind of like having a girlfriend around and we can go do lots of fun things. So we saw Niagara Falls. We saw Niagara Falls from all angles. We saw it from above, below, beside, at night, during the day, from Canada, from the Rainbow Bridge, just all over the place. There's so many ways to get close to Niagara Falls. It's amazing. It's spectacular. So we did all different types of tours while we were there. We did the Maiden of the Mist, where you poncho and you go out on the big boat and the boat takes you like right up to the falls and you get totally drenched. That was fun. I didn't get too wet with the poncho on, just my feet. And my tennis shoes got drenched, but other than that, it was pretty good. And there's also something called the Cave of the Winds, which was really cool. You take an elevator down. I don't even know how many floors or feet they said it was, but it was down. Like you could feel your ears pop. So you go down and then there's a walkway out around one of the parts of the falls and there's rainbows. It's gorgeous. I really, really enjoyed that. We got drenched on that one too. They do give you ponchos, but it's just inevitable, especially if you want to get a good shot, a good picture under the falls with the rainbow over your head, which was just a really cool picture. It's on my Instagram if you follow me on Instagram. So that was really fun. There's also a huge observation deck on the New York side that you can go up and you can see the falls from that angle. So of course we had to do all of it, and hence seeing Niagara Falls from a million different angles. It was really cool. We also went over to Canada. There's something there called the Rainbow Bridge where you can walk across if you want or you can drive. The traffic was crazy. So we decided not to drive the car. Ken's mom and I went over to Canada. Ken didn't really care. It's Ontario across the bridge. So we just walked across the Rainbow Bridge, which you get another view of Niagara Falls when you're doing that. And we went over there and we hailed a taxi. I thought I would be able to get a Lyft, but apparently it's not as easy over there with, the Uber app and the Lyft app. So I wasn't prepared for that, but there was a taxi just sitting right there, and he took us up to a town called Niagara on the Lakes, which was really cute. I'm glad it was just Ken's mom and I, because it was just a bunch of little shops and, cute restaurants to eat at. We had 2 lunches. One was like a wine and cheese kind of plate thing, and another was in a totally gluten-free facility restaurant where I could safely eat sandwiches. As some of you know, I do have celiac disease, so I have to be super careful where I eat when I'm traveling around like this. So we found a place and it was delicious. I had a great sandwich. And then later we got the cheese plate and we tasted local wines from just that region up there. So when you're driving from Canada side, when we crossed the bridge, there's all these wineries along the way. It's a beautiful drive up to Niagara on the Lakes. And the taxi driver was super nice. He was sort of giving us a little tour. He was stopping to let us take pictures. So that was really fun. It was about $50 to take the taxi up there. So just a heads up if you ever decide to do that. But we had a blast. And just a little more about the Rainbow Bridge. That's where customs is to get into Canada. So there was a guy there at the end of the bridge, and you just walk in, you show your passport. We had to show proof of a COVID vaccine. You have to do a little online form that you have to download an app and fill that out before you can go. So they check all that stuff when you try to cross over into the border. So we did that, and, we walked and explored a lot, and we stayed in an Airbnb that was right there. It was like a 10-minute walk to the falls, which was nice and not so nice. So a heads up, there are these helicopter tours that go on all day and all night around Niagara Falls. So we were staying right there near one of the helicopter tour places, and you could just hear it constantly going on. So that was not cool for me. Like, I can't stand a bunch of outside noise like that. I know you get that in a city, but it just, if I ever did it again, I don't think I'd stay that close. I'd probably just drive into Niagara Falls and pay for parking or something, because that was pretty obnoxious. So what else do we have going on? So along this journey, you might have heard me talking about like my fitness journey with Ken. We've been working out a lot. We usually can find a Planet Fitness in most places we're at. So we did find one in Niagara Falls. We were able to keep up our routine, which was good. The last day we left, it was like a workout day. So we wanted to fit that in before we drove to our next stop, which was Vermont. And, we don't have towels with us. We're driving in this little car from city to city, and we don't have towels. We use them in the Airbnbs. So we basically had to just get like paper towels from the gym and use those as towels to take a shower, because we had like an 8-hour car drive ahead of us. So that was improvising a lot. I'm starting to find, like, doing this digital nomad thing, you have to be really flexible and improvise when you don't have the proper cooking tools or towels or a place to take a shower. So we've really been improvising a lot. I just thought that was a funny little story. I dried off with paper towels and had to wrap one up in my hair so I could dry it in a little bit at Planet Fitness. So let's see, what else? So we've been driving a lot. We've been listening to podcasts. I don't know if you guys like to listen to a lot of podcasts. We have been binging the podcast Morbid. It's so good. I love it. I don't know if you guys like true crime and that sort of thing, but if you do, I highly recommend Morbid. It's about cryptids and ghosts and serial killers. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of scary. A few of the places we've been staying have been like in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere, on these big farms. And they've been pretty scary, especially listening to this podcast and then pulling up to these places at night. We've definitely had conversations about potentially being murdered or something, and people not even know where we are, because our family half the time doesn't even know where we're staying. So it would probably take a while for people to realize that we had been murdered. So that's just a side note. Or we joke about like driving down these old country roads at night, maybe seeing like a creepy cryptid type thing on a back road somewhere. And personally, I'm waiting to see Bigfoot or something like that in these places that we're going to. For example, when we arrived in Gandyville, it was the middle of the night, and I was like, okay, this is the start of a horror movie. Like, we probably are going to get killed here. But nothing's happened, so it's been fine. And all that to say, just if you like podcasts, check out Morbid, because we have listened to it literally, I don't know, probably 50 hours of Morbid podcasts over the last couple of months, just driving around different places. So let's see. So we went to Niagara Falls. We left Niagara Falls. We got in the car after our Planet Fitness stop, and we started driving towards Vermont. We booked a place in Vermont, and it was just gorgeous. That drive from Niagara into Vermont, and I'll tell you more about the other places we've been, but just driving all along that northeast coast corridor up there has just been so beautiful. I've never really been up northeast like that, and I'm really loving it. Gorgeous. So one little funny thing is we were driving to Vermont, and our map app, Google Maps or whatever, rerouted us because I guess there was an accident on the highway that we were taking, and it rerouted us to Scenic Byway route number 8 to Vermont, and it was due to an accident. It was a gorgeous drive. We were loving it. But we noticed that we were about to run out of gas. Like we had not filled our tank up for a while. And, we didn't think much of it. You're on the interstate, you'll stop and get gas when you need it. But this rerouting took us through these little country roads, no towns for 30, 40 miles. And I think we had about 26 miles of gas left when we finally found a gas station literally in the middle of nowhere. Just this little gas station. Thank God. We really lucked out. We had no cell coverage and we were going to run out of gas. So that was going to be a real mess to try to figure out what to do there. I don't even know what you do in that situation. I guess we would have walked to somebody's house, knocked on the door, and hoped they had some gas until we could get to the next place, or a phone or something to call for service. But anyway, when we were driving through West Texas, we actually made it a point to fill up every single time we saw a gas station, even if we had a half a tank, because in West Texas, it's very spaced out and you really don't know when the next gas station is going to be. But we kind of got out of that habit when we came back to, the East Coast. We weren't really doing that as much. So clearly we forgot to do that in Vermont. We almost ran out of gas, 26 miles, and, that was going to be a real mess. So anyway, point of that story is keep your tank filled if you're traveling and you're not sure where the next gas station is going to be, or if you get rerouted onto a country road, stop and fill up before you go on this new adventure that the map is taking you on. So after all that, it was beautiful. We crossed over on Route 8 into Vermont. It was a gorgeous scene, mountains, river, part of Lake Champlain, a huge bridge, just gorgeous. So we booked a place in Cambridge, Vermont. We didn't know anything about that town. It's just, I think I've shared, we find Airbnbs that seem reasonable in our price range, and then we book, places that we can drive to other places and see if we want to. So we booked in Cambridge, Vermont. It was such a cute town. There were like maple syrup places all over the place, and these little stores with local products. There was like a local wine store, cheeses, just all these Vermont products. And it reminded me of that movie Baby Boom. I don't know how old you guys are. Some of you might be too young to remember this, but there's a movie called Baby Boom with Diane Keaton. She was like this high-powered exec. I think she was in New York or something. And I don't want to tell you the whole story, but basically she inherited a house in Vermont and a baby all at the same time. So eventually she moves to this house in Vermont, and there's this scene in the movie where she's in this local Vermont store, and these yuppies, I guess you'd call them yuppies. I don't know what you call them. They come in and they're like, oh my God, this is so cute. Look at this Vermont cheese and the maple syrup. And oh gosh, should we get another can of maple syrup? It's just a really funny scene. So even if you go YouTube it, it's hilarious. But anyway, in that movie, she also realizes she needs to use like her executive skills and starts making baby food for this baby. And it turns out she's making like gourmet baby food. And she starts marketing it to these local Vermont shops. And in the scene, the yuppies from out of state or whatever are looking at her gourmet baby food. And they're like, oh my God, this is so cute. We need to buy like 20 cans. So, when I'm in these little Vermont stores, I was just remembering that movie and remembering it was like an influence on me, because she just, from out of nowhere, this problem started, where she was in this town by circumstance and she had all these skills, and because of the problem she saw, like she couldn't find great baby food for her baby, she decided to make her own and turned it into like this multi-million-dollar business, which, as some of you know, is just, who I am at my core, like this serial entrepreneur. So walking in these Vermont stores really reminded me of that movie and Diane Keaton, and what an inspiration that movie was to me, even when I was very young when it came out. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's awesome. It also will show you what Vermont looks like if you've never been there. Anyway, so back to Vermont. Cambridge was a great sort of epicenter for us. It, as I said, had a bunch of little shops. It even had a gluten-free beer brewery there, which I never get to drink beer with celiac disease because, it's barley, malt, hops, everything a celiac can't have. But there happened to be like a mile from our Airbnb, a gluten-free brewery. So I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I was super excited about that. It was just happenstance. So a little tidbit, if you ever go to Cambridge and you're gluten-free, check it out. But we were in the epicenter of a bunch of cool towns. So we were close to Burlington, we were close to Stowe, we were close to Waterbury, Montpelier. All were like within like an hour drive at the most. So we did a lot of day trips while we were there. Super fun. I really love Stowe. From Cambridge to Stowe, there is this, I can't even think of the name of the road, but they call it going over the knob. And you go up a really high mountain, and it's very crazy, windy road. You can go like 5 miles per hour. It was terrifying, but beautiful. So if you're ever driving that way, hit that road there between Cambridge and Stowe, because it was gorgeous. So we did that, and we loved Vermont. We got to relax some. I think we were there about 8 days. We did a lot of hiking. You know, we always try to find a great place to hike when we're there. So that was fun for us. Love Vermont. Highly recommend it if you've ever wanted to go. So then we got in the car and we went to our next destination, which was Bar Harbor, Maine. And if you don't know Bar Harbor, it is the home to Acadia National Park, which is amazingly gorgeous. Bar Harbor is like an island off the coast of Maine, and it's so fun. There's all these restaurants, there's beautiful hiking trails. Acadia, I can't even tell you how gorgeous Acadia is. We did a ton of trails through there around lakes and up, I think it was called Cadillac Mountain, to the very top of that. You know, just gorgeous. So if you're into hiking and these national parks, it's one of the prettiest I've seen in a long time. And, you know, we've been out to Colorado, we did Zion. Acadia is its own natural wonder, so I really recommend going there if you visit Bar Harbor, or just go to Acadia. It was beautiful. There's camping there, there's RV parks. We rented an Airbnb, of course, and it was like a beautiful log cabin just in the middle of the woods. Scary again, cryptids, Bigfoot, whatever. We didn't see any of that, but it was a little bit scary out there just in the middle of nowhere. So quiet, but kind of creepy at night. So a little tip about Acadia, we parked outside of Acadia, we parked our car and at a parking meter, basically like a time parking meter. So when we got into the park, we realized that this hike we were going to do was probably going to take us like 3 or 4 hours, and we'd only put 2 hours on the parking meter. So factor this into your time if you're doing parking meters and going on a hike. This is a lesson we learned, because you get about half a mile into Acadia and there's no cell coverage for Ken or I on our cell phones. We have 2 different carriers on purpose because we want to make sure we always have good reception. If one carrier is not working, oftentimes the other one is. But in this case, neither carrier was working. So we were like, okay, there's no way to add time to our parking meter. We can either leave and go back to the car or risk it getting towed. So luckily there were some people around, and I realized this one woman did have Wi-Fi. So I went over to her. I asked her if I could tether onto her hotspot for a few minutes with my cell phone and, you know, log into the parking app and pay the meter that way. So thank God that worked. And I'm sharing this just to like show you that there's different ways to deal with these problems if they come up. Literally asked somebody, she was so kind, and she said, yes, of course. She gave me her hotspot password on her phone, and I was able to pay the meter. We didn't have to worry about it. And our car did not get towed, thank God. So that was fun. What else did we do in Acadia? One day we went to Acadia, we rented e-bikes. I don't know if you guys have done this. I was a little on the fence. I was like, no, I think we could just take real bikes. We're pretty fit people. I don't think we need the e-bike. But there were 2 left. It was the middle of the day, which was highly unusual, they said. So we were like, you know what, let's get the e-bikes. Okay, so we're never going to not rent e-bikes again. Just saying, because you could decide if you want to turn the electric part off or the battery operated part off and just ride without it, or you can turn it on for a little bit of an assistance. Glad we got it, because we rented the bikes and we rode back up into Acadia. And they have these carriage trails in Acadia where like the horse-drawn carriages go all through. You can rent those and do that too. We didn't do that, but you can take these e-bikes, they're class 1 e-bikes, and ride them all through these carriage trails. And the carriage trails are pretty hilly. There's a couple of trails that go all the way around and up to the top of the mountain. I think it was called Day Mountain. where you could see all of Bar Harbor from the very top. It was gorgeous. But if we didn't have these bikes, we never would have made it up there. This hill was like super steep. Even the bikes were struggling to get up this hill. So we're glad we had them. We got to see pretty much every single bit of Acadia on these trails. We did, I think it was 26 miles on the bike once we returned them to the shop. I took just a picture so I can remember how many miles we did. And I think we only used 50% of the battery. So we could have gone a lot further, but that was also a day we were leaving Bar Harbor, so we didn't want to like waste the whole day because we still needed to drive. But that was so fun, and I highly recommend it. If you go anywhere, there's so many places you can rent e-bikes now to drive around cities and just even these hiking trails in the national parks. It was definitely a highlight taking the bike and getting to see Acadia from that perspective. It was a lot of fun. And not to mention you just blow right past people in regular bikes, and that's kind of fun too. So we did that. So that was Bar Harbor. The rest of the time, we went into the actual city of Bar Harbor. There's lobster rolls everywhere. If you like lobster rolls, they are literally at every restaurant. Delicious. We did find a couple of places that had gluten-free lobster rolls, which, made my day. Went back there 3 times and ate the lobster rolls. Unfortunately, I had just started Weight Watchers again. I'm like a lifetime sort of Weight Watchers, chronic, like on and off the diet type person. My whole family is like slightly obese, so I've always struggled with weight and that sort of thing. So I was back on Weight Watchers, but Bar Harbor, basically, I just blew it again. It's hard. It's hard, guys. Traveling to all these places, all these like highly recommended restaurants, gluten-free restaurants. It's hard to just like say no and eat healthy. But anyway, I'm back on Weight Watchers. I'm on track right now. So hopefully, it's all going to be good. But gluten-free lobster rolls in Bar Harbor, amazing. Ken had the real lobster rolls. He loved them. He thought they were just delicious. So if you go up there, make sure you get a lobster roll. A couple other things about Bar Harbor. It's called Bar Harbor because there is a sandbar that is in the harbor that is only exposed at low tide. So at low tide, you can walk across this huge sandbar to an island across the way, and there's a hiking trail over there. So we definitely did that. I didn't know that's why it was called Bar Harbor, but apparently that's the history, the origin of it. We walked over, and apparently people like really don't time this out well, because if you don't time the tides right, you get stuck on the other side of the island. And I even heard stories about people who were parked on the sandbar and their cars got washed away. So I don't know how you do that, but apparently it happens a lot, because there's even a ferry you can call to come get you if you get stuck on the other side of the bar. I think it was like $149 or something for them to take you back. So luckily we just went when it was super low tide and we didn't have to worry about that. But that was a fun hike, a fun little adventure if you're ever there. So what do we do after that? So we spent our time in Bar Harbor. It was fantastic. I really didn't want to leave. I was like, I could stay here for a month, I think, because it's so beautiful. And the weather was just perfect, 70s, gorgeous. The leaves are starting to change, early fall. It's just so pretty up there. Anyway, so the next place we booked was in Portland, Maine. I wanted to go to Portland. I have a friend, a dear friend. Y'all might know her, Cindy Gonzowski. She runs the Whole Therapist Facebook group. She also has the therapistboutique.com. She makes these really cute t-shirts with different therapist logos on them. I've got about like 5 or 6 of them. I love them. So go check her out, the therapistboutique.com. But anyway, Cindy lives in Portland, and I've always wanted to check out Portland. So, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get to see Cindy, get to see Portland. So we kind of procrastinated on finding an Airbnb there, and at the last minute I found one that was like new. It didn't have any reviews, but it was cheaper. So I booked it, and that was a mistake. Don't do that. We got to this place. It was like a 3-story sort of brownstone, like we were on the top floor. It was okay. Turns out it was in a really not great neighborhood. It was on Sherman Street. 2 blocks over was a park that basically has been abandoned and turned into a tent city for the homeless population there in Portland. And we didn't realize that. We walked down to the park because we thought it was a park, but it was really like a homeless tent city. So it was kind of scary, actually. And knowing, there's a lot of mentally ill homeless people, and I'm not minimizing that, but it was a little bit scary to be that close. And I definitely wouldn't go walking around there at night by myself. It didn't feel that safe, that location we had. And the Airbnb itself was not great. The bathroom, there was some like part of the floor that was mushy in the bathroom. And I don't know what happened. Like they mentioned there was a leak or something after we complained. And there were like these flies that every day there were like 10 to 15 new flies. I think they were coming out of this leaky part of the floor. It was totally disgusting. We complained and they came up and I don't even know what they did. They said they sprayed, but the flies stayed there. So that was terrible. I guess every once in a while with these Airbnbs, you run into stuff like this. We probably could have complained and left, but I think at that point we were just kind of tired from just week to week, place to place, New York, Vermont, Bar Harbor. Now we're in Portland. I think we were just tired and just kind of felt like we'd deal with it. The beds were comfortable. There were no other problems really except for that and the location. And it was street parking. So our car got damaged, which you guys might have heard me mention before. We, on an impulse whim, bought a BMW Z4. I've never had a car like this before in my life, but it's a nice car. It's super fancy. It attracts a lot of attention. But parking it on the street was not smart because somebody like parked too close and put this huge scrape on the back bumper. So we were kind of pissed about that too. We were like, ugh, bad location, parking, there's these flies in the bathroom. So that part was not great. And all that to just say, maybe book further in advance than just like a week away like I did and just try to go for the cheap place. I didn't really research the neighborhood or anything like that before I booked it. But anyway, Portland itself, I really liked. About 6 blocks from where Airbnb was, there's this part of town called Old Port. And that's where, it's like a harbor, the harbor part of Portland. There's shops and restaurants. And Portland really is a foodie town. There's all kinds of restaurants. There's all kinds of gluten-free places, which, I love. So I had sushi. One night we had a lobster that was stuffed with seafood. That was amazing. There's a place in Portland called Holy Donuts, which are like those potato donuts. Those are my favorite donuts. But they have an entire dedicated gluten-free part of Holy Donuts. So I was able to get all these different donuts and eat them. Again, Weight Watchers does not like that. I didn't even put in my points that day, if that tells you anything. I know nobody cares. I'm just cheating myself, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it after eating those donuts. And they were worth it. They were delicious. So anyway, on top of doing all this fun stuff, I did get to meet up with my friend Cindy. She's a therapist. She started a group practice back in January, which is so amazing. It's grown. She already has like 6 clinicians working under her. And the super cool thing is she invited me to come like to her, I guess it's monthly supervision meeting, to come in there. She invited me to come in and speak to all of her therapists. They're all these young therapists that are just really starting out. They're super excited about their careers and what life has to offer them. And, she wanted me to talk about building multiple income streams, how to do this as a traveling therapist if that's what you want to do, and also talking about insurance-based topics for these clinicians. And they had a lot of questions about all of that. We only had about an hour, but it was humbling and I was flattered that she asked me, and it was so fun to meet these therapists and be able to just give them some guidance around like you can actually even start now in Cindy's group practice being a traveling therapist because she's super open to that. She'll let you work remotely from wherever you want. She doesn't care. So they were excited and energized and sort of rejuvenated. And it was just really fun to be able to do that. I was so glad. Cindy took me all over. She took me to Cape Elizabeth. That's where she lives. She showed me the beach that she runs on every day. She took me to, I don't even remember the name of the park, but there was an iconic Portland lighthouse there. They call it the Headlight. So we went over to the Headlight and got good pictures and saw the harbor. It was gorgeous. So Really loved that. So that was Portland. Portland was fun. I did have an old college friend there too. We went out together one night and went to a couple of restaurants. We had some sushi, we had some oysters. She took me to this place called Top of the East. It's like a hotel, but at the top there's a restaurant and a bar and a gorgeous 360 view of Portland up there. So if you're ever there, I recommend doing that. We were right there at sunset. It was gorgeous. And then we went to the super secret speakeasy. I don't know if you guys know who Patrick Casale is, but he gave me the heads up about this. Like, I guess it's just by word of mouth, but he told me about it. And you have to find this place. And when you get there, you just go down these stairs and it looks like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a mirror down there and it looks like a locker room, really. So it's kind of weird. It's like, what is this? And then you notice you can open one of the lockers and you can pull this drawer out. And when you do, a secret door opens and there is a speakeasy in there, which is basically a bar. The place is called Lincoln's. It was really fun. So my friend from college, Paula, and I, we went there. We had a few drinks. We hung out. It was really fun. So if you're into that kind of thing, I'd recommend finding the speakeasy if you go to Portland. So at this point, our stay was up in Portland. We were glad to leave that Airbnb, but we were truly exhausted at that point. So when we got to Portland, we decided we were going to book a place in the Poconos, just a quiet place where there's literally nothing to do but relax and chill. So we did that. So right now, as of the recording of this episode, we are in the Poconos. I've never been to the Poconos. We randomly picked an Airbnb in this town called Tobyhanna. Guys, there's nothing to do here. There's some hikes. We did a hike around Tobyhanna State Park. It's a beautiful lake. The leaves are changing. It was about, I think it was a 5-mile loop, but that's about all we've done here. And I can tell you it's deeply needed. We needed to relax. We're here for, well, we were going to be here for 8 days. Then we are booked in Florida for the rest of the winter. So we're going to drive from here down to Florida. But Hurricane Ian is hitting right now. So we asked the Airbnb that we're in right now if we could extend our stay a couple days. And we're going to try to time our drive down to Florida around this hurricane. So we're not exactly sure when we're going to get down there. We do have an Airbnb booked for the entire month of October. I think I mentioned in my last podcast update that we're going to probably start doing month to month. It's cheaper and it's less stressful to just like chill in a place for a month. And we just hope the places we're staying are nice and we like it there. We're going to stay for a whole month. So we're doing that right now for the winter anyway in Florida. So that's what's going on. That's where we are with things. It's been fun as usual. You know, these places have been pretty beautiful. Anywhere we go, there's always a good restaurant to go to, always somewhere to hike. So that's been a blast. We're in a quiet place right now. We're relaxing. For those of you that do have chronic health conditions, you can probably relate to all my talk about gluten-free and all that. My body actually is upset with me right now. I guess I'm just getting these trace amounts of gluten in all these Airbnbs I'm staying in. I've got a rash right now, like some sort of hive reaction. My face was kind of swollen up today. You know, my body's screaming at me a little bit. So we're having to kind of correct the way we're doing things. We bought some pots and pans. Anybody with celiac knows that the smallest amount of cross-contamination from old pots that have had gluten in them can still make you sick. So we're reevaluating, trying to figure out how to keep my body healthy while we're doing this. Probably going to stop going to these restaurants that are gluten-friendly and not totally gluten-free for a while just to get my body happy, healthy again. And lastly, the entrepreneurial side of me, a couple things going on. I am launching a webinar right now with my friend Gabrielle Juliano-Villani. I think I'm going to have her on the podcast soon because she's a traveling therapist too, but she's also an entrepreneur. We're going to be doing a live webinar on October 18th, 2022. If you're listening to this later, it'll be available for purchase, but it's called Don't Panic, How to Survive a Rigorous Insurance Audit. So Gabrielle owned a group practice and got called up for a huge Medicaid audit in her group practice. She passed it with flying colors. And in this webinar, she's going to be sharing how she did that, exactly what she did. And it's going to help anybody participating in the webinar learn how to do that in your own practice. So if you do get called for an audit, which we all have been, Even if you're an out-of-network provider giving super bills, you can be audited. A lot of people don't know that, but you can still be audited if the insurance company has been involved at all. So if that interests you, I'll put the link at the bottom of this podcast episode if you want to come join us on the 18th live, and of course the replay is available as well. And the other thing I'm working on is a multi-state private practice, nitty-gritty, kind of everything you need to know if you want to have a multi-state practice in the United States. Me and Dr. Lisa Lovelace are doing this course together. This week we did a joint interview with Person Center Tech, Lyeth over there. She is amazing. You guys, Person Center Tech, if you haven't checked them out, go to their website. And also with Eric Strom, he's a lawyer and a therapist. So we met with them and we talked about all of the considerations that you need to think about ethically, legally, tech-wise, if you have a multi-state practice, or even if you're a traveling therapist going from state to state. So it's going to be super valuable. We're adding that to our course, and we're hoping our course will be out soon, maybe a couple of months. I'll put the link here for that wait list also if you guys are interested. But that's what's going on in the entrepreneurial side of me right now. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you have any thoughts, questions, feedback. I'd love for you to go and rate this podcast. If you rate it, it brings it up in the ratings for Apple in general. And then other traveling therapists can find it easier. So I hope you'll rate the podcast and just let me know what you think about it. And I will be back in a month with another update on our Florida stay for the winter. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist Podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.